little things and big impact. So a lot of times in life, we spend a lot of time waiting for things to happen, waiting for things to calm down, waiting for peace to emerge, waiting to have time for our priorities, waiting to have time to take time off, waiting for special time with friends and family, or to be able to make time to do the things that we want to do. And sometimes we keep waiting while life is happening, no? Whatever it is that you want more of in your life, are you waiting for it? And what does life look like in each moment? Do you have a sense of driving the car in your life, or do you have a feeling that you are the one being driven around, or sometimes even dragged around? Do you find that you're a passenger? I want to invite up Reverend Brenda to share a little story with us this morning. Thanks, Reverend Brenda, for being here with us.
Absolutely. So this story it took place decades ago, and I think I will always remember the moment. We had a couple of family peeps in town for the day, and we all decided to go out to lunch together. So as we're being led through the restaurant to our table, I happened to glance over and I saw a family of four: mother, father, a young boy, probably about 8 or 10, and a young girl, maybe 5-ish. The father is behind a newspaper. The mother is occupied on her phone. The older boy is occupied with a handheld device. And the young girl has her face down and she's coloring her placemat. As we moved past the table, I nudged Bill, my hubby, and said to him, "I bet they think they went out to lunch together."
Thank you for that story, Reverend Brenda. I bet they went out to lunch together. I bet they think they went out to lunch together. I bet I did something today. I bet today happened. Do you ever get to the end of the day and look over your shoulder and think, what happened? What did I do with this day? I had these intentions. I had this plan. Do you ever have time that goes by, a week, a month, a year? Look at how you spent a year and think, what happened? I had these thoughts, these intentions, but somehow I found myself dragged along in whatever came that day, and my attention went to whatever shiny thing I saw, and I don't feel like I'm living the life of my intention. I don't feel like I'm making memories. We all have parts of our lives or aspects or moments where we experience this. It's part of the human condition. But what can we do as far as a spiritual practice to make little shifts, to do little things that can have a big impact on our lives? I have a girlfriend that always says whenever we're together and whenever she is having experiences with her daughter, she says, we're making memories. And that's something she inherited from her parents, to just be conscious in the moment and to allow that thought, making memories, to bring you into this now moment so that we can be conscious and aware of the memories we're making. Have you ever noticed how you don't necessarily have memories of the dinners that you made when you're running around thinking, I've got to put in the laundry, I'm doing the dishes as I go, I am thinking of 5 different things, I'm on my devices texting or trying to get other stuff done, I am mega multitasking, and I'm cooking dinner? Is that the night that you remember? Or is it the night that you slowed down? I was just recently making dinner with my daughter, and we were making pizza for the first time. And so I was getting everything ready, and then I was really aware of it was the first time we were making the pizza. And so I just slowed down. I put on some music. I poured myself a glass of wine. I set the whole table up so that we could chop the vegetables, put it all out. And I decided to become really present Instead of thinking, let me fill the bath, let me start doing the dishes, how much time do I have? What does the clock say right now? I just slowed down because it was the first time. And I thought, you know what? We're making memories. I don't want to remember rushing through dinners all of the time, trying to get to what's next. I want to be present right here and right now. We often reserve these times for being present to things like birthdays, Christmas, holidays, vacations, first times doing something. But the spiritual practice reminds us that being present is the gift that we're called to bring into each and every moment. So whatever it is for you in your life, and many things may come to mind, consider what you would like to become more present to. Consider paying attention to the moments where you don't even really feel like you're in your body. You just feel like you're wisping through life or moving through actions, or you are being a doer instead of a beer, that you're just popping from thing to thing. Because this is it. This is it. The moment you're making dinner, this is it. The moment you're doing a task, this is it. This is life. So if we can call ourselves back into the present moment, if we can bring ourselves into conscious awareness by using this affirmation whenever it applies to us, and just sweetly speak to the depth of ourselves when we notice that we're fluttering around or being dragged or driven through life, and we can just pause and say, this is it. That moment that we become aware, that moment that we wake up, this is it. No one else is going to set the calendar for you. No one else is going to slow you down. No one else is going to give you time off. No one else is going to create task-free time. No one else is going to get intentional for you. No one else is going to make your memories. This is it. This is it. This is us doing it. And it is for each of us to get intentional with our living. Now, that's not meant to guilt us or shame us or blame us. No one knows what's going on with a family when they have a dinner like the one we shared, or a lunch like the one we shared in the story. No one knows if they've been gearing up for it and they said, you know, we have all this present time with each other, and now we're going to go on this dinner and we're going to have it like this. Who knows what's going on with that family? Only we can know when it's our moment, our time, and our memory. Are we conscious about it? Are we intentional? Are we in alignment with our intentions? You know, I was recently watching the show This Is Us, and there's a moment with Beth and Randall and their mother, who is Felicia Rashad, Carol in the show. And the mother is staying at their house, and the mother of the children, Beth, is just kind of running around trying to live life and feeling like it's chaotic, and feeling like her mother, the grandmother, is there just watching, criticizing, taking account of everything and taking record and judging her. And you come around later in the story, and sorry to bust it if you haven't watched it yet, but you come around later in the story to this heartfelt moment where the grandmother says, I'm not judging you. I'm not looking at all of that. I have a very quiet house right now. I have nothing going on in this house that I'm in. And when I come here, I'm just present to the complaining and the sounds and the chaos and all of it, and soaking it in, because it's the sound of life. And of course, that's not exactly what she said, but that was the nutshell. And I found myself tearing up. I found myself touched by that moment of sharing, that awakening, that anything, no matter what it looks like, no matter if it looks crazy or chaotic or whatever we might judge it to be, there is a portal there. There is an invitation there. There is a possibility there that if we were truly present to the moment, the now moment, We would be invited into an entirely different experience. And that experience would be one of being fully present, would be one of slowing down from the inside out and showing up with gratitude, with awareness. Eckhart Tolle, in the book A New Earth, which I'm going to share a little bit from today, says this. He says, the mind has a deep-seated habit of seeking the fullness of life in the future where it cannot be found, and ignoring the only point of access to it, the present moment. Ignoring the only point of access to it, the present moment. So can we get present? Can we get present? He goes on to say, when you look upon what you do or where you are as the main purpose of time, when you look upon what you do or where you are as the main purpose of your life, you negate time. This is enormously empowering. The negation of time in what you do also provides the link between your inner and outer purposes, between being and doing. When you negate time, you negate the ego. Whatever you do, you will be doing extraordinarily well, because the doing itself becomes the focal point of your attention. Your doing then becomes a channel through which consciousness enters the world. This means there is quality in what you do, even in the most simple action, even in the most simple action. So can we call ourselves on it when we reserve making memories for the moments we're taught to value, like first times and birthdays? And can we find ourselves bringing the fullness of consciousness, even when we're washing dishes, carrying water, making pizza, doing the laundry, going through the tasks of life? Can we bring consciousness to each moment? Now, it could seem overwhelming to think of shifting our focus and shifting our perspective on life, thinking of all the things that there are to do and how can we get things done, thinking of all the lists, thinking of all the life, the complications. Anyone that's tried to get on passcodes to places, get into their banking information, doing that kind of thing, you no doubt have found yourself at one point or another starting to do one thing that seemed like it could just take a second, seemed like this is going to take 5 minutes of my time. And then through passwords and customer service and automatic recordings, you find yourself an hour later completely frustrated. I found myself that way just this last week. I found myself actually, and it's a little embarrassing to say, but I'm going to say it. I found myself crying at the computer, crying out of frustration that I was trying to do something that was seemingly simple, that should only take a second to complete, should only be this period of time. And I just kept hitting roadblock after roadblock. And when I started crying and I think I even barked at the computer. I think I did it like a lion's bark, just a little rah. And when I did that, my little one came up to me, looked straight into my eyes, gave me a pause, and said, "Take a deep breath, Mama. Take another, Mama." And I kid you not, with this gentle and graceful and beautiful voice, stayed right there saying, "Take a deep breath, Mama. Take another breath. Take another deep breath." Little things, big impact. So how can our spiritual practice have a big impact on the present moment, on our intention? Taking a deep breath, giving ourselves the time to pause, remembering when we're kind of off track or feeling dragged around, that this is it. This is life. We are making memories right here and right now. Can we give ourselves a moment to meditate? Give ourselves a moment to pray? If we've lost something, can we connect in whatever way we do? For me, it's St. Anthony. Can we connect in whatever way we do and remember there's divine support right there? Do we pray ourselves in? Do you pray yourself in before a difficult task? Like, how dare I have sat down at the computer? I mean, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? To sit down at the computer and try to get things done without praying myself in. Silly little rabbit. Do we pray ourselves in? Do we pray ourselves up? Do we start the morning like that, blessing our day, asking for support in our intentional practice? That practice also includes including and inviting others. In a moment, will we give ourselves the space to just text a friend and say, I need you to send me some light today. Could you send me some prayers? Could you pause for a second? I'm having a really difficult time. Whatever it is that's going on, could you hold me in your heart today? Could you visualize me laughing today, or whatever it is? But do we engage our spiritual practice? Because sometimes we think of these things as big, huge things. We think, oh, if I'm going to have a life of a spiritual practice, I need to be a monk in a monastery. I need to have everything set up. I need to have silence. How often do we think we need outer conditions to be in a certain way? I need to be in the mountains. I need to do it on a retreat. Every day is our retreat if we create it, no matter what it looks like, when we engage our spiritual practice powerfully. So can we do that? Can we pray ourselves in even in the moments where we notice that we have some forgiveness work, or that we just need support? Or do we just keep going through the motions, rolling on the hamster wheel of life? So the first key today in becoming intentional, in making memories, is to look at our spiritual practice and engage it in tiny ways that have a big impact. Today isn't about sit down and meditate for an hour a day. It's not even about sit down and meditate for a half an hour a day or 20 minutes. Today is about what are the little things that I can incorporate into my life to remind me that this is it. To take a deep breath and to be here and now fully present. The second key is to take a look at the morning. Take a look at what you do in the morning. What does your morning look like? From the moment you begin to become aware, start to scan the first hour of your morning. Scan it for your actions, scan it for your emotions, scan it for your thinking. What happens in that first hour of the day? Do you wake up, get out of bed, and automatically start reacting or responding to whatever is in front of you, attending to tasks, moving through the motions? Or do you create? Do you generate? Do you have dominion over how you spend that first hour of the day? Sometimes we think that we are human doings, and we hop out of bed and we just start responding. We hop out of bed. Sometimes before we even get out of bed, we reach for a device. We look at it, and then we just start trying to get things off the list, or trying to get back with people, trying to respond. Do you give yourself task-free time? Because if we are not intentional, we will be fluttering from one shiny thing to the next shiny thing. We will be prioritizing everything that comes to us, everything that one pops in our mind or comes to us to respond to. And the sad part about that is no one and no thing from outside of us will create the space for the true priorities or the spiritual practice or showing up intentionally. That will not be given to us. That can only come from us inside out through the practice. So think about that first hour of the day. What goes through your mind right before you get out of bed? What goes through your mind right before you get out of bed? What do you do right after you get out of bed? I have a hunch that if we are intentional, just like tithing, time, talent, and treasure, when we give 10% to where spiritual nourishment is shared, I have a hunch that that law would apply here as well. That if we could be intentional, awake and aware with 10% of our day, with that beginning part of our day, or even the beginning part or the after at the end of the day, if we can be intentional in those spots, we will be saying to the rest of time in that day, to the rest of the hours, to the rest of the moments, we'll be saying to our mind, we'll be saying to our spirit, let the rest of my day flow in accordance with this consciousness. So what do you do? Aside from rushing to your morning coffee, yes, I hear you. How do we start our day? Is it intentional? Because there is a great practice to look at there. At the end of the day, we often look over our shoulders or look at the day, and it doesn't always feel like the day we wanted to create. It doesn't always feel like we made that day happen. It often feels like, that day happened to me. I'll try again tomorrow. And we've got to have grace with that, right? This isn't about judgment. This is about expanding our practice around how we show up in each moment. It's about feeling whether or not we're really in our body, whether or not we're really in a moment, whether or not our mind is in the present moment, from moment to moment. Tiny things have a big impact. If you question whether or not that's true, think of retirement. Think of the tiny thing, the tiny little thing of starting a retirement account when you're 19 years old and you have your first job, and just doing something, no matter how little it is, but doing something and starting a practice versus starting that retirement account when you're 50 or 60. Tiny thing has a big impact. Think about Five to Thrive. Think about all of those who give just $5 a month to Unity Village Chapel or to wherever they see spiritual nourishment shared, whatever it is, thinking maybe that won't make an impact. Maybe what I have to give or what I'm comfortable giving right now, maybe it's not going to have an impact. But when you put it together with all of the other people that do that, whoa, the impact. Everyone's seen a GoFundMe site. Everyone's seen a starter project. Little things can have a big impact. So, checking in with the spiritual practice, looking at how we spend our morning and making sure we're not being pulled into the passenger seat of life from the get-go, but rather we are creating and being highly intentional at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And the third is a big step. The third is to watch the radar. Throughout the day, watch the radar. Checking in to see if our actions are aligning with our intentions, and just noticing what comes across the radar of our mind, our emotions, and our actions throughout every day. When you think of someone, do you shoot them a text or call them right away? Or do you put it on a list or turn away from it and think, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, and maybe come back to it as a recurring stress list thought over and over? Or do you just pick up the phone and say, I don't have time to talk right now, but I just wanted to know you came to mind? Sometimes those moments are portals into seeing how much support we have in this universe and how truly connected we all are. Probably everyone has had an experience where they followed that thought, that notion, that idea of, oh, someone just came to mind and I'm thinking of them, and they took action and either had a completely fulfilling experience and came out saying, thank goodness I did that, or you realized that that intuition, that radar blip, was about more than you. It was actually a calling into service. It was actually a calling of connection, saying, someone needs to hear from you today. I had a beloved recently reach out to me after having a dream and having, I was in the dream, my daughter was in the dream, and they just reached out the next day and said, I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. You were in my dreams and this is what was happening. I'm unpacking it. How powerful that can be. Because our dreams make a difference. Our dream can have an impact. The whole unity movement, dreams was incredible in the beginning of the unity movement. It's the reason we have the village itself. Do we listen to our dreams? Do we notice the little nuances? I had a dream the other day about bees. I didn't even think about it. I mean, it was very significant when I was having it, and my daughter was there and I was kind of protecting her from bees, and I kind of got all the bees away except for this one that landed right on my palm, and it landed right there, and it was like this slow motion thing that I was trying to get the bee away before it stung me, and it was slow-mo, and I did get it, but it did sting me. So it was this slow experience of being stung by the bee. I didn't even remember the dream when I woke up. But the first thing in the morning, we went on this walk and my daughter saw a little bee and she said something about the bees. And I said, oh, I just remembered my dream. And I told her about the dream. And later on in the day, I was talking to another beloved about how their beehive just arrived earlier than it was supposed to be. And it was arriving that day or the next day. And it's just interesting. Now that example isn't some huge, powerful, life-changing thing, but it shows the connectedness. And sometimes those dreams, when you follow them, they end up somewhere that you wouldn't even have imagined. They give us insights to things we should look at, check into, pay attention to. But so often we just pass by them because we're not mindful of the moment. We're not present. We're not right here and right now. And this is it. All of the guidance, all of the intuition, all of the insights, all of the visions, they're here right now in the dream state and in the waking state. Do you have consistent nudgings, consistent urges that come across your radar that you just push aside? Check into that account. Check in with that person. Move forward into that. Create more space in your life for this. Take action here. Look into getting one of those. Things that keep coming back. Create mindfulness around those things. And when you find yourself having an emotion, do we engage in the unity practice? Knowing that our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, they're all connected. The law of mind action says thoughts held in mind create after their kind. So do we sit in a moment when we are feeling emotions or feeling intensity? And do we pause and ask ourselves, what was I just thinking about? What was the framework of my thinking just a moment ago? And dive into it like it's a little creative writing assignment of the mind. We can question even the thoughts, right? Question them and say, was that thought even true? Where did I get that thought from? Have I outgrown it? Can we check in when we are feeling and dive into what we were thinking right before it? The same goes for moments of action. Do we notice that when we fall asleep during something, what was happening? What was being said right when we checked out or right when we fell asleep? If we had something at work to be present to, or something, a family member, a conversation that was happening, what happened right before we checked out? And take a look there. Did I check out right when I was supposed to be paying attention? What happened right before I was triggered? There is an incredible opportunity there. What happened right before I tripped? What happened right before I missed my turn? Where was my mind? Similarly, we can take a look right after something happens, or right after we feel something, and pay attention to our go-tos. We can watch for what we do after an action or after an uncomfortable emotion. I know one of mine is if I have a hard day, or if there's a conflict or something that it's just like, oh, that wasn't really what I wanted. That's not what I want to experience right now. I immediately think of it, and it's so semi-conscious, but I immediately think, how could I get saag paneer today? That's a spinach Indian dish, but I think, how can I get that today? And I live about a half an hour away from probably 40 minutes away from my favorite Indian restaurant. But I will notice within myself, if I have had a hard day, my mind will start mapping out the day and the traffic, and I will think, how can I get saag paneer? Now, granted, that's not something that I overdo. That's something that I do to take care of myself, but could I expand on the ways I take care of myself? Could I expand on my go-to? And could I notice what happens every time before I have that desire? Because for some of us, we go into addictions with substance. We go into addictions with food. We go into addictions with conversation, with thinking, with gossip, with anger, with whatever it is, with self-harm. We go into things as our go-to without even being aware. Now, this isn't about judging ourselves. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have the saag paneer, or you're not going to do whatever you do to sometimes just let yourself have a break. But it means we become acutely aware. We become mindful. We begin to know thyself. And if we choose, if we want to, from that space, from that practice, from that moment, we may choose to expand our go-to, to invite our spiritual practice to be the space where we go to for comfort, where we go to release, where we go to be nurtured. So our invitation is to have an expanded practice of reflection, so that we can look at our lives and be aware, be mindful, and maybe even ask ourselves, how can I upgrade so that I can be more intentional about aligning my life with my vision, about aligning each moment with my vision? Far too often, we think this is something that's going to happen in the future, or someday there's going to be enough time, enough space, enough quiet, enough calm, whatever it is, to have it. Calm is not just going to come to us. We create it and we invite it. Space, time, peace, memories, love. They're all right here, sharing the same exact space as the chaos, the task lists, the suffering, the clutter, all of it. Right here and right now, in the same room, in the same space, in the same mind, in the same heart. We are in the midst of it. This is it. So the invitation is to get intentional, to get present to each thing, not to judge, just to watch, to take baby steps, to take tiny steps that have a big impact, to look at any area of our lives, any area of a present moment, and to really ask ourselves, What could I do right now that's a tiny little thing that could have a big impact? For me this morning, when I woke up and I was going around getting ready and doing things, I stepped outside of that door. I put my feet on the Mother Earth and I did my good morning sun prayer. It takes but a second, but it's my way of connecting. It's my way of centering. It's my way of grounding. And it's my way of making life meaningful. Changes are not likely going to happen to us, but they are guaranteed to happen through us. I want to share another piece from A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. He says, as long as you are unaware of being, you will seek meaning only within the dimension of doing, of future. That is to say, the dimension of time. And whatever meaning or fulfillment you find will dissolve or turn out to have been a deception. Invariably, it will be destroyed over time. And meaning we find on that level is true only relatively and temporarily. I'll read it again. As long as you are unaware of being, you will seek meaning only within the dimension of doing and of future. That is to say, the dimension of time. And whatever meaning or fulfillment you find will dissolve or turn out to have been a deception. Invariably, it will be destroyed by time. Any meaning we find on that level is true only relatively and temporarily. A legend lifted recently into her freedom form. Reverend Mary Omwick, who served Unity and the Association for Global New Thought for her lifetime, for years, and touched so many people, lifted into her freedom form. I imagine there are so many spiritual communities today that are acknowledging her and her contributions to individuals and to our movements, and acknowledging her life. She was a legend, not because of everything that she did, not because of all of the tasks, but she's a legend because of her heart. She has a legendary heart. She watched, she saw, she stopped. And when she stopped at you, a world opened up and a memory was made. I can remember clearly the moment she stopped at me. I can remember where I was standing. I can remember what the air felt like. And I can remember how she looked at me and a world opened up. I don't know exactly what she said, but she looked at me and told me she sees me. She saw my work and she knew me. And from that moment on, a bond was created and a relationship that had consciousness emerged. That doesn't mean a relationship full of detailed tasks or intense communication. That means a portal opened up. There was enough of a connection in the present moment that she opened worlds for me, doors for me, because she opened her heart for me. And she did that with so many people. I believe she'll continue to do that in her freedom form. But that's a life of impact. That's what happens when each moment we show up, we're intentional, or for as many moments as we can be intentional. That's what happens when we spend our life making memories. Little things, little moments have huge impact. You've probably heard it said that a little progress each day adds up to big results. I also believe it's true that little things have big impacts, and moments of mindfulness each day lead us to intentional living. Eckhart Tolle says, without living in alignment with your primary purpose, whatever purpose you come up with, even if it is to create heaven on earth, will be of the ego or become destroyed by time. Sooner or later, it will lead to suffering. If you ignore your inner purpose, no matter what you do, even if it looks spiritual, the ego will creep in to how you do it, to how you do it. And so the means will corrupt the end. The common saying, the road to hell is paved with good intention, points to this truth. In other words, not your aims or your actions are primary, but the state of consciousness out of which they come. Not your aims or your actions are primary, but the state of consciousness out of which they come. Fulfilling your primary purpose is laying the foundation for a new reality, a new earth. Once that foundation is there, your external purpose becomes charged with spiritual power, because your aims and intentions will be one with the evolutionary impulse of the universe. Namaste.